Friends, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to pop in and share a little bit about the BQ Notes journal. This particular version of the Bible Quilt journal is the only one that is vertical, which makes it great for note-taking in church or Bible study. It has formatted pages with these cute little templates on every page, so you do not have to come up with the structure of designing your quilt blocks on the fly as you're also trying to take notes. It does have a page back here of blank tabs, so you can cut those out, and those are really helpful, especially if your pastor is doing a sermon series and you just want to block that off in a particular section of your journal. You can decorate it however you want on the front. Often I will do washi tape border around the edges because that just reinforces it from all of the use that you're going to have. It is a fairly thick cover, so that helps also. You can put your name on it. You can just write in or stamp the year. A couple years ago, I just decided I was just going to do 1 year at a time, whereas prior to that, it was kind of a blend. And really, it is just a really fun way to capture your sermon notes in a very colorful way, and it helps you develop that process over time. You can incorporate handouts from the service. If you have stickers that you want to come back in and add anything that's going to illustrate and help you remember, you know, the key points of the message. So this is a flip through of just a few years ago. And these are fun. There are a few of these post-it note templates in the back, and that just provides you with instant color for your quilt squares. And then occasionally I skip a page. I don't know why. I probably had a reason for that. If you're sponsoring a child, this just seemed to be a good place to put that in. And then as you get into the holidays, you can take along your little Christmassy colors of washi tape and pencils and stuff. And what I usually do, I either have a bag or I have a purse that's big enough that I'll just slide that notebook into it, and I'll take a little pen pouch. I don't have one of those here, so I don't take one quite this big, although you could depending on your bag, and that just has in it some of my favorite Papermate pens, colored pencils. If you can find these, this brand is Crayola. It's a 2-in-1, so you don't have to carry as much in bulk if you can do that. And I typically have a glue stick in there because I'm kind of the crazy lady in church, usually during the singing time, that I will tear my bulletin apart so that I have that section of scripture that's that I can just put directly into my journal. And then it's always more fun with washi, so I usually have a little bit of washi available with me. In that, if you don't want to glue during church, that also gives you a way just to kind of keep that tear out from the bulletin in place until you get home and you can glue it down. So let me just do a flip through of my current one, and I'll show you the steps that I take. Here's my BQ Notes that I'm using for this year. It has a protective cover on it. You can see that it's already quite lived in. I did not really decorate this one very much. I got the year on there, and that's about it. And this is just a simple label maker. In the past, I've colored around it because this is a metallic element. If you've got some little gel pens, that's a way to kind of bring that clipboard design to life. Sometimes I'll just put my name on it and add some washi. This is the trick that I showed you in the past. You just use a little ink pad, open it up, and This just happens to be the right color. That'll just warm it up a little bit in terms of color, and then also softens any use that you can see as it gets some wear and tear on it. And there's one more. This is one that I started just by using in our community group. So if you're part of a Bible study and you just want to have all of those notes in one place, using this little journal is a good way just to help organize those. There's a sample page at the beginning. I'm going to flip through that one. This is a prayer page that I typically have at the beginning of my journal, and that way it's always there. So I have a list of names and prayer requests. If you do not have time to cut out a tab out of the back and you have access to some of these, I think they're Avery is the brand. They're just like little tabs that just go right on there, and then you can just use a Sharpie and write in the title. That's probably the easiest, and it's not going to add too much bulk. So here's an example of another one of those. So somewhere along the way, I had the inspiration to incorporate pieces of scripture directly out of our church bulletin, because I realized I was spending a lot of time trying to get the scripture written plus capture the points of the sermon. And that's why I'm packing the glue stick whenever I go. So this is from today. I basically just tear out the scripture passage. And the fun thing about this one is because it depending on the length of the call to worship passage and other things that are in the bulletin, it's never in the same place every time. Your church may do it different, and if they have just one loose page, that's great. And this just happens to be a really good size too, because I can put that passage in there, and it gives me just a little bit of a margin around there to add in some notes. And today's one, because it was in the center, I realized, oh, I can just cut it from the top, and I'm making this a little flip flap. So I folded it, I glued it on this back side, and then I reinforced it with washi. So now I can just reference it with my notes. And that also, if you move this part around in different places of your journal, you're not going to get like one part of your journal that's getting really thick and bulky. Okay. So when I'm really on my game and we're going to second service, I often will have a chance to come in and just kind of prep my page, which might be adding some color around the edges, putting some washi in there, maybe shading in some lines. And so any of these that look like they're a little more pulled together probably was because I had the time and wherewithal to do that. Most of the time I don't. So I arrive at church during the singing, I tear apart the passages that I want to include. I surreptitiously get my glue stick out, I glue the back of it and put that down. And then maybe when we're sitting down and doing the announcements, that's when I come in and pull out my washi tape, and I'll just secure the edges a little bit, just so it's going to stay in place and not be too flappy. And then whenever we read the passage aloud, because I already have it affixed to my journal, I grab one of my colored pencils, and then as it's being read aloud, I can highlight the key terms, verses that I think we're going to highlight with the verse, or just highlight the ones that are impacting me during the read aloud. So then that's kind of the prep prior to the sermon. And then once the sermon starts, Usually there are 3 key points, and a lot of the templates in here are very conducive to that. So while the pastor is doing his little warm-up intro, as they like to do, I will capture the title and at least the first main point from the bulletin and go ahead and write that in, and then just be kind of looking at the template that I have for that day in terms of the spacing. And then I typically will write, as you can see from a few of these, I will write those topics in the same color and then doodle around them. And then as he's going through the message, that gives me the chance to go ahead and write in the points. And usually have a song later in the service. So that's when I'm coming back and I'm doodling and I'm shading in the edges a little bit. And when I get home in the afternoon, depending on what we have going on, my intention is then to come back and add a little bit more embellishment. So that might be shading in the background. It may be that there was a reference mentioned that I didn't have a chance to write out the scripture, so I will come back and add that in. Sometimes it's just adding some little stickers that, again, emphasize or illustrate some of the key points. I also utilize stickers if I know that I have made a mistake in writing, because sometimes when you're listening and writing at the same time, we have little oopsie daisies, whatever we want to call those. And so if you have a sticker or a piece of washi tape, when you come back and you're reviewing your lesson, it's really easy to cover that up. Or like this one, I just happen to have some stickers that really illustrated what the key points were. So this was talking about our bodies and how we are using our bodies to serve the Lord. So for some reason, I had this little sticker sheet that had a bottle of water and running shoes and #fit goals. And this is about self-care. So I just use this to illustrate. And sometimes I don't finish, that there are gaps that my intention is to come back and fill those in, and that doesn't happen, and that's okay too. At least I have the meat of it on these pages, and I can go back and reference them. Here's another example of using the bulletin in a unique way. This was a really long passage, so I got this in there, and I just left part of it on there as a flap, because that was going to be an awkward little piece that I wasn't going to be able to get it on the same page. So I used the fold of the bulletin and tore out the rest so I could anchor it. There's a little sticker for who's driving the car. So I'm probably not going to draw a car, but if I have a sticker, then that'll just be a really quick way to illustrate it a little bit. So I am not taking a full arsenal of markers and pencils along with me. So sometimes seasonally, I will switch out what I have in there when I realize, oh, I'm using the same colors all of the time. If I switch the color seasonally, then it just kind of blends all together a little bit also. So here's an example of a tab that's just out of cardstock, but he said, this is going to be our series over the next few weeks. And here's an example of, this is one Sunday, this is another one, and I have pieces of the bulletin on both pages so that you can do pieces of the bulletin and scripture plus the notes. It depends on how big of a note taker you are, how much space you want. Maybe you want to get 2 years into one of these journals, so you really can do it all on one page also. So here's an example of another way you can do it. Okay, so I hope that gives you some ideas of ways that you can incorporate your bulletins. You can attach them like that at the top of the page, on the side of the page. And like I said, if you move around where you're doing that, rather than like every week have it in the center, it's going to kind of spread out that bulk so you don't end up with a really awkward feeling or looking journal. And they do look lived in over time. Like this one has, I noticed today, it has a little bit of a bend to it just because of me cramming it in my purse repeatedly week after week. I have also had people ask, well, what are you going to do with all of these? You've got them all stacked up. Occasionally, if you're working in another journal, or maybe you start a new Bible study and there's a different topic, I recently pulled one out and added it to another journal. So that gives you a chance to make these very, very user-friendly, and you can shift them around. So basically what you would do, you could come back in and tear out that page. You can cut off the little remnants that you're going to have where that binding comes together. And then you can use a three-ring hole punch or the Happy Planner punch, and just punch holes in, and then insert that into your other journal that you're updating. This one is a little bit of a challenge. That's the honeycomb template, because those sections are so small. So that may be why that prior one I had a blank page, because I wasn't sure how to incorporate it, or it didn't fit the series, and maybe the next page did. This is one that I know that I totally came back and I polished it off afterwards, because this is with pastel. This is an example of, sometimes it's just all the words, and you just break it up just a little bit with some stitch lines, and it's just the words. So you don't have to have stickers and washi tape and all of that. You really can make it your own and do it in such a way that it's going to be a meaningful resource to you for years to come. Here's an example of when you get to those fall pages. This is great for doodling, just filling in those leaves. And I guess I need to tear this out because I can use those in a future one, except I use the backside of it. So anyway, I hope this helps you just to embrace this particular BQ Notes is what I call it, this particular version of the Bible Quilt Journal, just because of its size, and it just is ready to go for your sermon notes. If you're doing an independent study yourself on a particular theme throughout the Bible, it gives you plenty of space to do that. or if you're in a women's Bible study and you really want to have that longevity of lessons preserved over time in one spot, that gives you the possibility to do that. Okay. Thank you. Let me know if you have any other questions. Have a blessed day.